Hi, David Oleski here with the 5 o'clock version of Live with David Oleski for the Rittenhouse Square Fine Art Show, 5 o'clock. Today it's called The Golden Hour with David Oleski. However, without a whole lot of sun, it's not really the golden hour. It'd be more like the middle gray, dim and dismal hour, but no worries. We're going to make the best of it, and we're going to, today I'll be painting a pear, of all things, on this small canvas board. This is a commission painting, so you're going to watch an artist actually making his money. So prepare to be amazed and astounded. If you have any questions, just pipe up. Let me know. I'll look for it in the little hoo-ha here at the bottom, and I'll address any questions. You have a choice. You can watch me and watch me painting, or you could stare at my palette and just listen to my mesmerizing voice. I'm opting for this view of my face and what I'm working on here. So, all right then, I pre-mixed some colors just because, what do they say? Preparation is, I don't know what it is. It's something. So here, I'm going to sketch it out. You're going to watch this happen right in front of your very eyes. All right then, so I guess we're just about done. And welcome everybody. Again, I'm David Oleski with the 5 o'clock version of Live with David Oleski. And I'm going to be doing a small commission painting of a Bartlett Pear. It specifically wants to be mostly green with just the slightest hint of a blush of red. I don't know why the pear would be blushing. I'm blushing because I'm really self-conscious and I'm like in front of all these viewers now, and that's why I'm blushing, but this pear is blushing because it's just that healthy. So I already just sketched it out. I'm hoping that you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, and you can see on this 6" by 6" panel with oil-primed linen canvas glued to it that I have the sketch started. And here I'm going to just start blocking in some of the colors. As always, watch very carefully because it happens really fast. And if you blink, you might miss something really valuable. And I'd hate for that to happen. It's so quiet in here. I feel like I should have like a theme song or something. When I start my show, like, bah, bah, it's David Oleski, da, 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 he's a painter, dun, 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 dun. But no, it's just quiet. Anybody have questions? Look at this. Did you pick your fruit with a painting in mind? I did. I stopped at Wegmans this afternoon and stood there. I looked at the organic ones and it's like, they're nice, but they didn't really get me going. I mean, they tend to be runty and like odd shapes. And so then I looked at the non-organic, which I realize I'm cutting some corners and some people would rather organic and conscientiously harvested, but no, I just got the commercially harvested Wegmans brand Bartlett Pear, and I looked at a few. I have several options. One that's like a richer, darker green, which could be interpreted more as blue, which I would like to do that, but then this one has more of an even fade of the blush, so I'll be able to find some of that rich green, but transition a little bit to the blush, but not too much, because the painting that the client was interested in, which had unfortunately sold minutes before she had arrived, was the same transitions I like to embrace, which is green to red without ever going to gray, to find those beautiful transitions which tend to be like a cadmium yellow, sometimes a lemon yellow, really interesting hot spot transitions that make up the space between vivid green and vivid red. Oddly, you would think that as they transition, they would go through gray, but what mediums do you mix with my oils? Good question, Teresa Haig. I use a combination of turpentine, which you're seeing that backwards, so Utrecht pure spirits of gum turpentine, and sun-thickened stand oil, linseed oil that's extra thick and juicy. And I mix it to a viscosity that, you know, it runs off the knife in a certain way, kind of like motor oil. And then by the end of the painting, it just gets a little bit thicker and heavier so that it has more of a body to it. So that the final strokes I put on it will sit on top a little more, and the first strokes that go on when it's thinner grabs to the surface a little bit tighter. Can you see the pear? Sure, why not? I think this will work. I can turn the whole hoo-ha here, and you can see, I'm not seeing, oh, there it is. That's the pear. And then that, oh no, that's, yeah, right there is the pear I'm painting. This one, whereas this is the standby pear, that's just a reference pear. Unfortunately, it's not the true pear. It's the kind of facsimile pear, as it were. And see if I can get this back to the way it beautifully was. I keep forgetting, whenever I start running video, I suddenly get really hot. And I remember seeing David Letterman, and everybody would always show up, all of his guests, they'd say, oh my God, it's so cold in here. But I realized as soon as you start talking, what goes from a comfortable temperature suddenly skyrockets, and you feel yourself just overheating. Okay, so yeah, well, all right, you can see this, you can see me, and gosh, don't I look great. All right, so I'm gonna block in a few more of these colors, which, as I said, I've mixed these ahead of time just because rather than have you just stare at the side of my head while I keep grappling with one gray after another gray, and it wouldn't be that exciting, really. I mean, mixing grays, you know, it just goes on forever. I mean, not really forever, but, you know, here in live internet video land, it feels like an eternity, and I would hate to put anyone through that. So, I'm sure, yeah, it doesn't look like much here, but and I know somebody would probably love it if I could zoom in really, really close to this, but I have to move everything. I mean, as I get closer to the bottom, maybe, but then of course that means I'll have this whole camera in front of me. Oh yeah, somebody on Rittenhouse says, happens to you too. Overheating, sweating, blushing. Look how red my face is getting. Oh, I'm blushing like a schoolgirl in prom. So, there we go. Here's that. And the interesting thing that happens here is that this is only 6x6, and as I'm painting it initially with this monstrous brush, mind you, this feels really, really tiny. But then as I come down the home stretch and I start finding all those transition colors and start building it and rebuilding it and fattening up the surface, oddly, it starts to gain a volume and it feels bigger than just this little tiny painting. I guess it's a psychological thing that happens, and it's purely in my head. So, do I have a favorite way to mix grays? Yeah, well, I'll tell you. Like right now, I'm trying to mix the dark of the stem. So I'm immediately going to shoot for, let's get the richest, darkest violet. So I'm going to start with ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson and make a color that, for all practical purposes, is a rich, deep, dark lavender violet. But then to get that very quickly to almost black, I'll just throw in a little bit of cadmium yellow. Okay, maybe a little more cadmium yellow. All right, maybe that was too much cadmium yellow. As you can see, it's not an exact science here. We're just stabbing in the dark, but you can see there, that looks like a pretty light orange. Okay, so we're going to go back to the blue because, you know, if we could wind up with orange, well, then the blue would be the color that drops that down. And I'll just throw a tiniest bit of phthalo green in there because that will sock it right back down to the blue-green side of the spectrum. And then I'll go back to the alizarin crimson because it's now starting to look a little bit too much like green. See, now you're talking. There. And then suddenly, you know, in this bright light, it looks pretty light, but grand scope of things, that's probably darker than anything that's going on in this, you know, they're way up there. It's not quite as dark as the shadow of the second floor, but it's a really, really dark color. And it's dark light green. So if I put in a little more of the crimson, and that's probably just about the right thing to just do this little, I can't do that. I keep forgetting. This is a little tiny painting. Now here's where I'm going to use the little tiny brush, just to get that stem in there. And of course, at this early point, nothing has to be too exact. I'm just slopping it in there. Okay, now you asked about the grays. This is where the magic happens. So here I'm working with this color, which as we said, kind of reads as, you know, right from there, it's like a gray umber. I don't have to get the sheen off of that. You can maybe get an idea of what that is. So all I do is add a little bit of white to that and watch how this just, it fluffs up instantly to a color with so much body. I mean, right there, that's like an umber that you couldn't buy a color like that. I don't even know, how do you get this thing to get the light off of it maybe? Maybe there you can see it. But that's just, it's a really rich, I mean, that's a darker than middle gray, but just to give you an idea, I jump right from my blacks, try to keep balancing as neutral as I can be. If it leans toward green, throw in some red. If it leans toward orange, throw in blue. And just keep circling the color wheel to balance it out so it drops right in the middle of a very, very dark and neutral color. And then as soon as you add any amount of white to that, it just lights up. And of course, there's nowhere on here for that gray I just mixed, so we'll just set that aside, and I can use it as a base, as like a shortcut to mix colors and get up to speed. So no, I do not use black paint at all. My palette is ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, phthalocene green, permanent green light. I use a white that's just called Utrecht white. It's kind of right in the middle of titanium and zinc white. A lot of people hate it, but it's okay. I have a hard time finding hatred in my heart just for a can of white. I mean, honestly. And then on the warm side, I'm using alizarin crimson, cadmium red medium, cadmium yellow medium, and lemon yellow. At no place in my palette do I have earth tones. This is technically called the split 6 palette, where I'm using a warm and cool of each of the primaries. Warm and cool of blue, warm and cool of red, warm and cool of yellow, but I'm augmenting it with a warm and cool of green. Permanent green and phthalo green. Just opens up a whole new dimension of nuances you can find within all of those. And once in a while, just to put some skank on it, I'll use phthalo blue, just because I like to be fancy sometimes. Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you very much, thank you very much. So, yeah, back to the painting, eh? So the body of this thing is, for the most part, green, but the first thing I'll grab is cadmium yellow medium to even start to find my green. Just because, I don't know, well, you know why? Because of the blush. When you have green with a blush, the green is probably made of cadmium yellow more so than lemon yellow and going straight for permanent green or even cobalt blue. That would wind up just the vapid kind of a green. Oh, look at that right there. It's beautiful. That's just a nice color. Look at that. That is the phthalo green and the cadmium yellow, which kind of reads as an orange. And that color, yeah, right there, right in the middle of it. So it's just a beautiful color. And, well, I'm glad you could all be here with me right now. Now this is all really loose just because of the medium and how fat the painting is on this little tiny painting. It's really, this is quickly really way too wet. So a lot of times I'd get it up to this place and then just allow myself to get led away from the easel by distractions. Maybe I'll go frame some paintings, maybe I'll check my email. And then when I come back, it will have set up just enough that everything gets a viscosity to it like cake icing. Instead of right now, it's really loose. I don't even know, it's like dish soap. It's just, you know, and I like it to have a little more body before I start really digging in and building it. So if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and just chime in there, because today, people, I'm just chock full of answers. And I'd like to answer whatever you want to know. So is anybody out there having a drink? They say it's 5 o'clock somewhere. I guess probably even right here it's 5 o'clock. And if anybody's having a beverage, well then, gosh darn it, I'll have a beverage with you. But, you know, if you're not, then I'll just keep working, because I know that the interwebs want to be entertained, and keep my nose to the grindstone here and make sure I get some productivity going. Now here's something I do, which I tell my students not to do, but I like doing it just because, well, I don't know, guilty pleasure maybe. There's not a whole lot of shine to pears, but the thing is, if I just threw in that little highlight from this dismally lit window we have here, just the tiniest bit, and it just really quickly helps to structure the volume of this. And then suddenly I have different facets I can address. And you saw I just did that with the knife. I just scratched that in there with the knife. That's how little I care about this painting right now. I'll learn to love it as it develops, but right now, I just don't care. I just used the knife. I just scratched it in there. So, just to keep everybody abreast of what it is what's going on in my little brain pan here. So, as I said, I love how the green of a pear can kind of careen off the edge into blue. And the name of that blue shall be cobalt. I dub thee cobalt blue. Now, there's a thing in painting, specifically from observation. I don't know if it's so much working with abstract painting, but in observation, they say you don't necessarily see it, but you can find it. So that means I may not see this blue that I just mixed, but if I just lay it in there, give it a shot, I may realize, oh, that is the color. So that's where all the trial and error, you lay it in, you scrape it out. You lay it in, you scrape it out. You work it, you rework it, you scrape it out, you try it again, you try it again. That just by that process, you discover nuances that you didn't necessarily see, but you found them, which is what makes, my paintings in particular so, I don't know, colorful, basically. And the more I paint, the further I reach for those variations on just the very dry reality of what it is I'm seeing. I mean, it's really dim and dark. I mean, when I called this the golden hour a week ago, yeah, this really was golden light. But right now, it's fairly dim and dark, and I'm not quite stabbing in the dark, but I don't have a whole lot to work with here. So what I'm looking at is a fairly subdued and dark still life. There's not a whole lot of difference between the tabletop and the shadow. But, and Sharon Strine says, when you do several pears, apples in a piece, do you work all of them at once, treat them separately? Actually, I do, I paint them all at once. I'll do the same process of blocking it in, but I'll block them all in equally. I'll hit all the shadows, I'll hit all the dark sides. Even if one of the dark sides is a different color, I'll block in that different color on that step. So all of them will be in similar stages of development throughout the painting. So nothing comes into focus quicker than something else. There's not going to be one tight one and one fairly loose. I like to have them all develop at about the same time. So here, Jackie Cornett. Oh, Jackie, we missed you last weekend. We were waiting on the edge of our seats for you to show up, but you never did. You missed a fantastic studio tour. But Jackie asks, do I ever work from photographs? Well, it's not kind of a middle gray answer. I don't like to be negative, but absolutely not. I could take a photograph of this and then just noodle it all night long, but I really think that the nature of my work dictates that I'd be chasing the sunlight, I'd be chasing the fact that this pear will be a different color tomorrow. The yellows will turn orange, the orange will turn red, and that's kind of the nature of how my paintings look. Like I worked it, kept it loose, and then just stopped and allow the viewer's eye to finish it, as opposed to getting it lit perfectly, snapping a picture, and then polishing it all night long. And especially when I work large, I'm grappling with a whole lot of different elements, but trying to resolve them while, just by daylight. When the sun goes down, this is dark. I don't use this light up here to paint, it's over. So I put the brush down and I'm done. And that kind of dictates how the painting is going to look. So somebody would like to see a close-up of what I have going on here. I don't know if my cords are long enough to do that. Maybe let's see. I'll try. Pulling Mr. Telephone from this. Oh, I got this wrapped, shock mounted as it were. And this is weird, doing it backwards. There you go. That's what we have so far. It's fairly monotone. I have yet to find some of the really nice warm transition colors. And even though I set this camera to reverse, it's still showing everything mirrored image. Which, interesting thing, when it really looks backwards, it doesn't look like it should look when it's, if you're reading from left to right. I think our brains are wired to read works in one way. Like in the old days when we used to apply to the art shows with slides, you could tell somebody's slide was put in backwards because it doesn't read right. The shadows fall the wrong way, and nobody's ever seen that piece of artwork before, but something in our brains is reading that it's backwards just with the way it's laid out. Which, interesting thing. So, oh, thank you, Jackie. Texture is Awesome. Well, at this early point, it's a little bit crazy with the texture. It's going to, I'm not going to render it, but as the paint fattens up, I'm going to settle the texture down quite a bit. Here's an interesting thing. Cadmium red medium. You know, what in life really is cadmium red medium? You know, it like really challenges your perception of how you see red. It goes beyond the red of almost anything. I mean, there are times when I found actual cadmium red in a transition of a tomato, maybe. It's too orange to be useful on something like an apple. And I just put a little bit in to think about, maybe I could find some of these transition colors in the shadow side that are like kind of mostly red, like a richer, darker red. And it's just so potent. Like even totally watered down with green. It's, well, actually, no, it's pretty good. That's really close. Okay, I'll take back everything I said. Just scratch that last part. Here, I'll let you see the color. Look at that. That's, there. Yeah, that's cadmium red with most of the same lime green I've been working so far. And as bright as that is, it's really just the color of a shadow. So just to allow it to sit in that darker transition color, it just lights up the shadow. I mean, the temptation would be just to render everything that's lit, but the shadows are where the real excitement is. And very quickly, this is becoming a very different painting than what the client had asked for, but honestly, I just don't care. It's going to be a really nice painting. It's going to be its own original piece. I'm not trying to recreate the other painting. I'm doing another painting from scratch, from another pair, from a completely different time of year, of light, of everything. And it's going to be its own painting. And that's something I like to make when I get a commission, I like to make sure that the client understands I'm not going to recreate the painting that you think I'm going to make. I'm going to make a whole new painting. And even though there's things about this that you love of the painting that you see or are thinking of, you're going to learn to love the new things I've done with the new painting. And I always tell my clients that when I'm finished, I will not change this. If there's something you would like to see done differently, I'll make another painting, but I'm not changing this. This was finished the way I wanted to finish it. And, I'll happily make another painting, but you're not going to have any option to change what I decided on and resolved. So I'm kind of sassy that way. So any other questions here? No? All right. Now it's kind of interesting. The color on the bottom of it, a big part of my paintings, it's just they're simple pear sitting on a tabletop, but to me, the really exciting thing is how the white tabletop is reflecting up onto the bottom, the belly of this pear. So you can see the color I've mixed. Turn it just the right way, so it's not just a shine there, kind of like that. I don't even know what color that is. Pale orange. But that just set underneath there describes the tabletop reflecting up onto the bottom. So now I'm going to do something else. It's really exciting. I think actually you're probably losing the great view of my face here. And change just a little bit like that. All right. So watch this. This is going to be really fun. So that same color that I just showed you, that pale orange, as I said. I'm going to fluff that up with white and then with a little bit of phthalo green. And when I hold it up, yeah, okay. So as I said, you don't necessarily see the colors, but you can find them. So that color, I'll show you what the color is before I put it on there. You can see that's like just a whole lot of nothing. That's just like a green, orange, yellow, gray. Just it's really not much to it, but it's a very, very particular color. So then what I'll do, I should have a brush one size bigger than this. Probably this brand new would have had enough bristles to be the right size. But just this whole quadrant that describes the color reflecting up from the tabletop. Wow. Yeah, so very quickly this starts to look like something. You know, and then every decision I make is based on all the other decisions that added up. So I get it to this point, and I'm looking at this, but I'm looking at that, and I'm realizing, oh, there's a real vivid, it's like a warm version of a lemon yellow. It's not cadmium yellow. It's definitely that real greenish yellow, but it's got a blush to it, which probably comes from, I don't know, let's just find out. How about that? So here, we're just going to start with the lemon yellow with a fresh rag. So I'll pull out the raw color of just the lemon yellow. You can see there, that's just straight out of the tube. I'll just hold it up and just say, yeah, okay, now which direction from that lemon yellow does that start to go? And this is actually lemon yellow hue, which has a greater opacity than straight up lemon yellow, which tends to have a translucence to it, so it reacts very quickly to any color you put in it, whereas the lemon yellow hue, it's almost like it's got a white to it, which actually I'm going to put white in it just because I want it to have a body. The white actually is going to act like a color just by reinforcing the pigment so it doesn't remain translucent. Wow, that was really technical, wasn't it? But here you can see, it's suddenly a whole different thing now compared to what I first showed you that looked like just like, it looked like lemon yellow colored oil. Now just by putting the white in it, it just totally just fluffed it up very nicely. So here I want to, here's a question. Did I study painting formally? Actually, as a matter of fact, I went to Maryland Institute College of Art. I graduated with a degree in painting in 1983. Bachelor of Fine Arts, as a matter of fact. I had a really good experience in art school. I really thrived on the discipline of both drawing from classical sculpture and then learning color theory through still life and interiors. And I use everything I've learned in self-critique and in objective viewing today, here, right now. Everything I studied in art school really does have a place right here. And I would not be the painter I am if it were not for the art school experience. I really don't think you could learn half of these things unless you had, I mean, being a young person with a teacher just baiting you and constantly making you second guess yourself, and just, you know, the emotional distress as you work through these things. I don't know if you could do that if you just kept it in perspective as this is just painting, don't take it too personally. When you're just a 19, 20-year-old kid, you do take it personally and you really do bang your head against trying to figure out these little puzzles. And yeah, art school was a really valuable thing. I mean, just being able to make the departure to understand how you need to remix the color as it comes out of the tube, just to get a more vivid version of it, and then make your color decisions. But, if somebody were recording this and studying it, you probably could learn a lot about painting. You can learn a lot about what it is I do. But I think, my paintings, they're, a compilation of corrections and adjustments, mixed in with a lot of just the shortcomings of my abilities, which I'm okay with that. This, I'm not a master. I'm not, attacking this with some amazing panache. I mean, I'd love to be working from a live model. I'd love to be doing portraits. I just, this is what pays the mortgage, but, I always imagined if I reached some level of success and I didn't have to worry about paying for the mortgage for this whole thing here, then I'd love to just have portraits and just do portraits every day. I was a portrait painter for years, and I think, few things are as challenging as not only getting a likeness, but getting life and all the things that really go into a face. But within the context of this limited thing of just a single pair, I mean, it's the next best thing. Do I have a favorite brand of oils? Well, everything I use is Winsor & Newton Artist Series, except for, as I said, my white. I buy in quart cans because I just work so gosh darn big that I need this much paint. And I've got I see there's 6 quart cans on standby because I use so much. And then my phthalo colors, I use Rembrandt, only because I don't think Winsor & Newton makes phthalo colors, or they didn't when I was buying in bulk a couple of years ago, and I just got in the habit of just use Rembrandt. I buy 4 tubes of phthalo green, and that lasts me a couple of years. It's a really potent color. So, I mean, I've tried other brands of paint. Liquitex is just thin. Williamsburg is overpriced. Vasari, I had a representative from Vasari come to the studio tour 2 or 3 years ago and gave me a couple of samples. It is really nice. It's really potent. You can tell the pigments are rich and it's potent, but for the price, I don't know that it's worth the big difference. I mean, Winsor & Newton is good paint. It's not great. It's not the best, but they have options like the permanent alizarin crimson, which is more color fast because it's using whatever the word is for the permanent alizarin crimson. And like I said, the lemon yellow hue instead of the straight lemon yellow. And I've become really familiar with using this particular palette of colors, and it's taken me a long way. And yes, Rittenhouse Square just posted my website. If you look at my website, there's it's chock full of information. It's riveting in how exciting it is. You can see the videos where I talk about my paintings, and you see time lapse of me doing the paintings, and then I've got a whole, you go in the information section and technical information, and you can see detailed explanation of everything I use, from the Robert Simmons Signette series of filbert brushes, right down to the brand of coffee I make and the coffee machine that I use. So, do you ever mix your own pigments or colors? No, I don't. I've had people say you haven't really painted until you saw what goes into making your own colors, but I feel like I'm spread so thin. I'm still not even done building this studio, and I'm trying to learn how to use a chainsaw and cut down trees, and the spiral staircase behind me goes up to a music room where I make the music for the videos that I also film and shoot and light and edit all of my own videos. as well as exercise and, you know, all the things that go into a well-balanced life that spread myself thin. I mean, there's a lot of things I do that I probably don't need to do. Like I build all of my larger canvases. I probably could pay somebody to do it. I like to make sure they're well made. There's a lot of corners that I don't cut, but yeah, not making my own pigments. I mean, I love to get into like woodcut and silkscreen and charcoal. I was just talking to another artist about, do you ever just sit down and draw? And we both laughed because we know how important of a foundation skill that is and how that's something everybody should regularly do just to keep different part of their cerebral cortex firing. And we don't. You know, it's like everything, you know, we have these, you know, we buy the pads, we buy the Conte crayons and all of this stuff and then realize, why don't I just be painting? Because painting is hard enough and you're definitely applying yourself. You're not sleepwalking your way through making a painting. And this is something that actually, you know, is part of your body of work as opposed to just a discipline just for exercise sake. So, oh, beautiful studio. I'm in a band. No, I'm not in a band. I was years ago. I don't want to be in a band because bands just smell funny and they keep strange hours. I've had a lot of experience playing with other musicians, but right now I do everything myself. It's all done with computers, and I play the guitar and the bass, and I know how to control the keyboard, and a lot of it just studio processing and multi-tracking, and you know, it's as push and pull and as experimental as painting, and to create these soundscapes. And if you want to hear samples of my music, my YouTube videos, every one of those, the music you hear in the background is from my studio. Some of that is just sampled loops, but some of it has been scored from scratch. And I'm playing every single instrument you hear. And yeah, so if you want to hear my music, it's youtube.com/David Oleski. And you'll see the newest videos with the really obnoxious banners. Every one of those has my music as the track for it. And even the back catalog, a lot of the older stuff was my music as well. You know, it's a fun way to make sure that my music gets heard by forcing people to listen to it while they're watching my video. If you want to watch me paint, you have to listen to my music. A nice little one-way deal I've made. I'm tricky that way. Oh yeah, too many bad apples. Well, you know, the funny thing about that expression, you know, there's a president that I won't mention because I don't want to get political here, but, you know, he keeps on saying, yeah, there's a few bad apples, but the expression was, you know, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. So saying there's a few bad apples, you're kind of like mixing your metaphors. It's like, no, the whole bunch is spoiled because of one or a few bad apples. You're not just saying a few bad apples is okay. But I don't want to get political here, so I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, a few bad apples. Hello, Carrie Sacco. Oh, Lisa Muller asks, what is the most challenging subject I paint? Ah, good one. I'd have to say my wife. Yeah, twice I've done portraits of my wife, and that was just challenging. That's, yeah, because you know you're always going to be measured. People are going to look at that painting, and does it look like her? Is it a nice painting? Does it look like a person that's the right height, the right build? Because all of those things, even though you're only seeing the face, you know, or like a 3/4 view from the shoulder up, the way it's painted can describe the entire body type. From the thickness of the neck to like a perspective, to the perspective of the presence of the figure in the same field you're looking at it. So many little variables that, and I take that to heart because, you know, she'll always be right there as a reference. So when people look at the painting, it better look like her, and it better look like a beautiful version of her. And yeah, so I'd say painting my wife is the most difficult thing. But in general, portraits are just really, really challenging. I mean, just like I study the colors on a pear that will make it turn in space. Well, the same thing happens to like the dark side of the, like a cheek that turns. There's a sheen to it that reflects the color from behind it. And I'm able to embrace that the same way I do when I'm painting a still life, but just a little turn of the brush and you can completely change the contour, and then suddenly there goes the likeness, that suddenly something blooms out instead of rolling back. And the other thing is the sheen of hair, especially black hair. You think about it, it's not just all one big mass of black, but there's a shine to it. It's like a blue, lavender, gray, violet shine that rolls off and becomes a reflection of a background color while just being black hair. And so you can imagine there's nothing easy about that. Oh, yeah, so yeah, somebody in Rittenhouse has seen the picture, the portrait of Amporn, and yeah, I'll share it. I'll send you I have a picture in the phone of one of the paintings I did of Amporn. One of them's really great, the other is really lively. It's solid, but it was when I was painting with a palette knife, and it was done with a palette knife, and it's really effective, but I don't really feel like doing a whole painting with a palette knife is really painting. But the first one I did, which was with a brush, I felt like it was very successful. It's a very small painting, 60 inches by 20 inches. I used to always paint her on her birthday. And I guess this year she, has a big birthday coming up, so maybe I'll have to do a painting of her on her birthday again this year, which will be December 30th. So tune in and maybe you'll get to see me painting my lovely wife, Amporn. Yeah, I have so few portraits. Everything is just the back catalog, which a lot of those are from art school or the first few years after art school. They're all in a box in storage. And it's tough to get in the swing of painting portraits when, you're hiring a model, and just my life is different now. And yeah, I'd like to do it again, but it's not easy to get everything to stop long enough to do a portrait. And you're asking a lot of the model, which even if you're paying them, you're still asking a lot of them just to sit and stare into space. And, and I'm going, half crazy like you see here now, and that's probably really hard to sit through. I couldn't imagine sitting there while somebody's jumping up and down and acting like an idiot the way I've been for the past few minutes. But it'll happen, I'm sure. I am young and life is long. Do I often paint directly from life rather than an image? Yes, as I had mentioned earlier in another question, I never paint from photographs. Not since I've been painting professionally, I've not used a photograph. What I do is I'll use a photograph as reference for the draftsmanship, just to make some reference marks. Certain subjects, like the ellipses of like an espresso cup or something, I'll use a projector and just sketch it out, because if one of the ellipses is off a little bit, or if the proportion of the handle is off, then it becomes like a soup cup and not an espresso cup. And my paintings are not about my abilities as a draftsman. My paintings are about my abilities as a colorist. So just to fast forward into being a colorist, I'll sometimes use a photograph just to make some initial reference marks to get started, if that answers your question. Daphne wants to know, what kind of a band was I in? Well, I'm a little embarrassed to say, Daphne, but my live band days were was the mid-90s. In the mid-90s, we had, what kind of bands was it? We had 9 Inch Nails, we had Depeche Mode, Nitzareb, Front 242, KMFDM, just some of the most creative and innovative and aggressive music from, it kind of dusted heavy metal. It was just brutal. So I was in a Gothic industrial band. I was the front man. I actually was the guy on the mic in the front of the stage with the guitar and the keyboard, entertaining everybody. And I had a computer and a small live band behind me, and we were doing industrial dance music. And boy, that was fun. But I'm an adult now and responsible, and those days are behind me, and it was fun. But like I said, musicians smell funny, and I don't like the hours, and the working conditions were never that great. So, and then there's a few people that know me really well know that I lost my voice for some strange medical reason, and that ended my musical career, at least being on stage. And in a way, that kind of set the stage for me to focus more on painting again. Another rock star. Well, some of the shows we did were a lot of fun, and there's few things compared to being on stage. Just, you feel like a hero. You just feel like you're the star of the stage. And it was a lot of fun. But I could not see a future in it. I knew that musicians, they have fun, but there's only so far you go unless you're signed and discovered. And I was already in my early 30s by that time, and I knew I'm not part of the program of being picked up by a label and embraced as the next thing. So this is getting pretty close, but it's also, like I said, it's still really, really juicy. Everything on here is like the consistency of dish soap, where I'd like it to set up and be more like cake icing. So I'm probably going to come back and revisit this tomorrow morning and just fatten it up a little bit. Well, thank you. Thank you. I hope it was educational. I hope I was entertaining. I hope I didn't make too much of a fool of myself. But that's what we do when we go live. Here on the Rittenhouse board, our little 5 o'clock club, we're just out there, just hanging in the wind, taking the chance of maybe looking like we know what we're doing, and maybe just looking like this. But thank you all for joining me here, watching me get this painting along, getting a good start. It was good to get stuff going again. It's been a few days since I've been painting, and it's fun to get the whole palette going and to know that in the morning I've got this thing waiting for me and I got to just jump on it and hit it. Okay, and I'm going to show a close-up of the painting here before I sign off. And let me see if I can bring the light over with it. There, we're going to take the phone off and look at this then. All right. And of course, you're seeing it mirrored, but there you go. So, thank you for joining me again. This is David Oleski with Live with David Oleski. And special thanks to Sandy Sedmak-Angle for motivating me to jump on here and get this thing going. And of course, Steve Oliver for being the steadfast compass for our organization, keep everything going, and for all the board members that jumped on and posed some good questions to help me along, so it wasn't just that uncomfortable silence that we all know so well. All right. And that'll be that. So thank you again, and everybody, be well.